Also, you spoke about gender norms, and obviously that's apparent when you're talking about senior leadership positions in sports, senior leadership positions, period. The women are the underrepresented population, so are minorities, so are LGBTQ communities. So talking about the underrepresentation and really what to do about it. I have some statistics I'll share with you in a little bit, which kind of shows some of the areas with I looked at leadership and gender and the disparity in Olympic sports and professional sports and in college sports. There's definitely, and looking at the administrator positions, it's those positions that has where someone has a decision-making role in the organization, for the department, definitely a decision maker. There's where the definition, if you use an operational definition. So in colleges, the most advanced college systems for athletics is in the United States, also in Canada. There are a few colleges which have competitive athletics in Europe, but for the most part, let me go back a little bit while I'm thinking about college, and one of the most powerful organizations is the NCAA, the National Collegiate Athletic Association. I also mentioned Olympic sports. The most powerful authority, supreme authority for the Olympics is called the International Olympic Committee. The IOC and the NCAA are huge, powerful entities in sports. And very interestingly, until 1981 was the year the NCAA first allowed championships for women, first year. That was also the year the IOC executive membership, which is about 106, I believe now, there was 0 women represented until 1981. So 1981 was huge. In general, if you look at in the new millennium, since 2000, there have been negligible improvements in the percentage and number of women in leadership positions throughout professional sports, college sports, national governing bodies, across the board. So the only exceptions, there are some exceptions in the United States, in America, the WNBA. Their president roles, there's 14 teams and there's 7 male and 7 female presidents, so that's kind of cool. But the numbers are crazy low in all of the other professional leagues. I'll also tell you that in intercollegiate athletics, the highest position is the athletic director, sometimes referred to as the assistant or the vice president for athletics, and a number of titles. The senior person in the athletic department. Across the board, it's about 20% of athletic directors in America and the NCAA, about 1,000 institutions, about 20% are female. The NCAA also has different levels of athletics, 1, 2, and 3. Division 3 has no scholarships, still competitive athletics. Division 1 are the ones that you may see on TV, even in Europe, as you know, American sports come over that way with American style football, and of course the Premier League soccer being very much improved here in the United States, and that occurring. So we're watching this across the board. But the commissioners for conferences in America is about 33–36%. In Canada, it's about 30, the athletic director positions. There's about, it's about 33. There's two conferences or 2 divisions in Canada. One has about 34% female representation in the athletic director position. The other one has about 37%. So there's some distinctions there. I look at this and I think about, how do you increase the number or the percentage of females in leadership positions as senior administrators with that decision-making role? How do you increase that? And there's 3 levels that you look at: the individual level, the micro level, the meso level, or the organization, the institution, and then the macro level, the societal level. If you think about at the individual level or the micro level, first of all, and I love that we're going to have men here speaking later on. We have the president of the university here at Russell Sage. Thank you very much for being here, because we're not preaching to the choir. This is something I think a male would say, or a female, because it doesn't matter. If you want to get to a leadership position, there's things you need to have at the individual level. You have to have the right stuff with those interviews, right? And you have to get over those hurdles. Anything that's giving you those self-limiting behaviors, you have to push through to get to the job. But you also have to get to knowledge about the jobs, right? You have to have access to the jobs. Maybe that goes into a little bit broader picture. You have to have the right education and the right experience. This is something at the individual level. Education and experience. And they talk about, for athletic director positions, one of the things that you really need to know about are budgets and managing football. Women need experience in these areas. They need to be, and I am so blessed that a good friend of mine working with the Pac-12 her role is oversight of football. So awesome, incredible. We have these little great segues coming here and there to make great representation for females. But at the individual level, that's what you need, some of these things. And also the social capital. You have to have those connections. You have to have people that are feeding you information. You have to have those that are advocating for you, pushing you through. And then look at the meso level, the institutional. What can the institutions do? What can departments do? What can organizations do to increase the number and the percentage of women in leadership positions in sports? It's just about it. Same thing you can do for minorities or whatever. You have to have good hiring practices, and you have to have an inclusive environment. The diversity has to be there. There has to be a commitment to diversity. And I go back to those hiring practices, not only hiring, but also succession planning. And this, of course, we're talking here about America and Europe. And I think when we talk more about the macro level, we hit some of these things and what was addressed earlier in the day and what's going to be addressed further on. But at the institutional level, I need those hiring people to take their time and be very intentional about how they go through the process. So it's having the right processes in place, making sure that I love this one. When you get 100 resumes for a coaching job and it's a female sport and 3 are female that may or may not be qualified or whatever out of those 100, do you go for it just because you want to get that knocked off of your plate, that task, and you just say, I have enough, let's go? No. I would like people to be more intentional and to increase their pool of candidates, especially minority candidates, female candidates, the underrepresented population. How do you do that? Reaching out to the right associations, using your networks, taking the time, investing the time, not just crossing it off the list. And there's a lot more things that can be done at that level. Also, the family-friendly policies, the flexible, because keeping more, not only do we want to attract women to the industry, we want them to advance to those leadership positions, so we need them to stay in the industry. Family-friendly policies at the institution, being more flexible, compressed work week, having on-site care centers, allowing someone to travel with the team or dividing up coaching duties, having an associate coach, things like that. All right, now let's go to the big one, the macro level, the societal level. All right, there's a lot of things that are effective here. What was said this morning, I absolutely love. Which note was that? Culture matters. So does democracy and quotas. I'd like to change that to say, so does democracy and policies. Not necessarily quotas, although I love finding out that in 2 years, Europe or just around the world, the Washington Post said there was 80 countries that had quota systems for electoral positions, like at big Fortune 500 companies. The board has to have a female representative. There's 80 countries, and 2 years later, there was 130 countries. Do you know what we do in the United States? California has instituted a policy that you have to have, well, there's a couple of phases to it, but basically female representation on a board if your company's so big. And yet the compliance level has not been great. And I'll tell you why. It's because there isn't enough sanctions. They're not penalizing to the extent that they should. Ireland's sports minister came out and said, I want 40% of our national governing bodies in sports to have females in leadership positions or on the boards or whatever. And if you don't, I'm taking away your funding. Boom. That's going to make people wake up. That, now you're talking. So there's something between a hard quota system and a soft quota system. The IOC, they send out to their national governing bodies, their national Olympic committees. There's 205 national Olympic committees, those that have sponsored sports in the Olympic Games. And then to the international federations, which are the sports that are in the Olympics. There's other federations that are non-Olympic, but they're still considered under the umbrella. But the IOC says we want representation and we want a certain percentage of representation on these leadership positions. And the IOC has been doing a good job. They have, as I mentioned, they're 105 members, and they're about at 35, 36% in the target. They call them targets instead of quotas. And the target's like 30%. In 2000, they wanted the target to be 10%. Woo, here we go. And then it was increased to 20%. And that was in 2010 when the Olympics were in Sydney. No, I'm sorry, it was in 2005, the year after they were in Greece. And then that was the first one, 2010, and then 2016, Rio. It's up to 30% now, a third, that they urge international federations, national Olympic committees, continental associations. They urge that there's female representation. And if looking at the numbers, even urging has increased in some areas, but not across the board. England, the Football Association, professional sports, back to professional sports again. In their leadership positions, they are at 50-50, men and women in certain positions. But then you go down to a little bit of the lower levels. I think it's called the county presidents, and they're back down to about 20 or 30%. I mean, it's just crazy how it still happens and it still changes. But these are things that have to be considered when you can also look at those barriers and challenges and what's been stopping people to get to those highest levels, what's been stopping women to reaching the highest levels. But there certainly are. I would rather focus on the positives and what can be done. Do I believe there will be parity? No, I do not. In many areas, there'll be certain pockets. I do believe there will continue to be increases in areas. There certainly will be. You're going to have, and you can go. I go back to what was said this morning about culture matters. You look at feminist societies and masculine societies, the Scandinavian countries, those are the first ones. Norway, I believe, was the first one to institute quota systems into politics or business or what have you, and it's really been permeating. And you can see those countries that are considered more feminist, more equality, the global gender gap, where they rank is at a much different position. They are doing the right things. You see more women in leadership positions in sports and other areas. I remember being in London in equality in the Olympics in 2012 and really pushing that inclusivity, very much so, inclusivity for gender, for sexual preference, for religious preference, for ethnicity, just across the board. It didn't matter, you're welcome, that everyone's welcome. And that's, and you see participation numbers that have been increasing, but those leadership positions for female, participation for females, great. That's, more females than men in some situations. It just depends. It just, depends on the sport, the country. You're going to have all those variables. But the leadership positions, you're starting to see a little bit of increase, but I don't believe it's going to be equal at any point. But you're going to see those highlights that we're seeing in America and also in the United States. I'm going to leave it with that because I really want to hear from the ski racer. I'm so totally psyched about this. And we're going to segue from the leadership positions and what's happening with women in elite sports in the participation manner. So why don't you come on up here and we'll tag team. I'm gonna share.
Okay. Thanks for having me, and thanks for the introduction, Fed and Bonnie. It's been really awesome being here today. I think I feel a little out of place because everyone here is so well-spoken and educated, and I'm a little bit of a ringer, but you know what? It's gonna be fun. So my name is Mikaela Tommy. I'm 26 years old, and I'm an alpine ski racer from Canada. I grew up skiing in Wakefield, Quebec, so just north of the border here, and at a small ski area called Edelweiss. I began my career on the national team in 2013. I am a college graduate with a bachelor's degree in environmental design from the University of Colorado, where I also skied on their D1 ski team from 2018 to 2020. These are some things about me that could be written down on a piece of paper and read about, but I don't think that's what I came here to tell you today. So on my flight over here, I was pretty overwhelmed with what I would share. I began reflecting upon literally my entire ski racing career and all the experiences the sport of ski racing has given me. The triumphs, the injustices, the traveling, the failures, the good times, the bad times, and everything in between. I guess I could stand up here and tell you everything I've witnessed about sport and why I think it's wrong or what could be better. But I think I would rather share one of my favorite memories in sport. This is a story about my best friend, MP. That's short for Mayor Pierre. It's a Quebec name. First, I'll give you a little context about ski racing to better understand the dynamic of the story. So although ski racing is an individual sport, we usually travel within a team and at the highest level with your national team. We share a handful of coaches spread between several athletes. We cheer for each other, but we also try and beat each other. And we come from all over the country and range between ages as young as 17 to people over 30. So it can be a crazy mix of people and personalities, but we act and function as a family, and we travel over 8 months of the year together. So since I was 17, I've been pretty much raised by ski coaches and my older teammates. One of my team moms was my good friend MP. She is 7 years older than me, but she's always treated me as an equal. Yeah, there you go. We were always roommates and adventure buddies. She was my mentor and my best friend on the team. And this is me and her. In 2018, I made the personal decision to step away from the national team to attend the University of Colorado and race independently on the World Cup circuit. This was one of the most difficult decisions of my life. I would be traveling around Europe without any support, no coaches, no ski technicians, no physio, nothing, just me. When I made my decision, my friend MP, who had recently retired a couple years ago, told me she would help me out and come on the road with me completely unpaid. Oh wait, that's okay. Don't just leave it. Okay. Oh no, you're gonna give it all away.
Oh God. Okay.
Don't look. Don't.
Oh, okay.
Okay. There. Okay. Sorry. So she offered to come on the road with me, and this was very exciting. But I also had a lot of doubts. On one hand, I would have more flexibility, and I'd be able to travel and train how I wanted to, with my best friend by my side. On the other hand, I had to find a way to pay for both of our expenses out of my own pocket and do all the logistics and planning. And being the unorganized, free spirit that I am, it was my biggest dream and my worst nightmare all at the same time. So before we even traveled to Europe, I need to emphasize that there was a certain anxiety I felt about the season leading into it. It was really hard for me. I had always been on a team. I really didn't like the idea of being away from the system that I knew so well. And the fear of the unknown felt very overwhelming. And this is why MP was such a key part of this story. She was always the relaxing type. No stress was her motto. So fast forward, now we're finally in Europe together, and it's late December of 2018. There's 2 World Cup races before the new year, one in Courchevel, France, the other in Semmering, Austria. We arrive in Courchevel for the race, and the energy feels electric. Everything is working out for us. We got put in the coolest art hotel. I have just handed in my final paper for the semester at school, and MP is really enjoying coach life. A little more context about ski racing. So the race I was doing is a giant slalom race, which is a 2-run race. You do 2 runs in 2 different courses, and it's your combined time. However, in World Cup, your first run is very crucial because they only take the top 30 from the first run into the second run. So if you don't finish in the top 30, you essentially don't even get a result, and all your travel there is for nothing. It's a lot, so it's a lot of pressure to travel all that way. Also, to reiterate, we are solo on this mission. So typically at a race, teams will have several coaches, several ski men, technicians, physios, doctors, media people. Like, they'll have huge teams for their nation. And it was really just me and her out there. So what was crazy though was before the race, I didn't really feel that way. I just trusted her so much, and I didn't even think about how disadvantaged we were. We just embraced being the underdogs, and we loved it. Next slide. This is just a funny one. If you know anything about ski tuning, you usually have like a bench and like a whole setup, and I was doing it on my lap like the night before one of the biggest races of my life. So it's pretty funny, just the challenge. See, just an example of the challenges we faced. So in Courchevel, I finished in the top 30, and that was a huge relief. I was the top Canadian at the race and came 19th overall. This was my best result in my life at that point, and I was so happy. The best part about the feeling was that MP was so happy too. It was amazing to share this with her because she understood the struggles that I went through as an athlete and how this moment meant way more than me than a result on a page. Before the next race in Christmas, we were in Austria skiing. You can just leave it there. Going with the wind became our motto for the trip. We often didn't know where we were going to sleep the night before or where we were going to train. We just kind of went with the wind, as we said. So we didn't really get a chance to relax over Christmas. Our Christmas day was spent finding a hotel, and then we spent the rest of the night trying to find a restaurant to eat at. If anyone's ever been over to Europe during Christmas, I know Fed knows, but the hotels host these like amazing 6-course meals, and the hotel we were at didn't have any space for us to eat anymore because a lot of people in the village went there to eat. So we were just racing around trying to find a place to eat. Grocery stores were closed at this point. We just wanted food. Like, we would have taken anything, if I'm being honest. So we desperately walk into this hotel across the street from ours after a couple hours of trying to find food. And I walk up to the bar and ask the waitress if she has room for 2 people. And she very kindly says 9, which just means no in German. So I got the message, and we were about to walk out, and this older couple that was sitting right by the door noticed that we got turned away, and they had a big fluffy dog, so we were petting it, and they said, "Hey, why don't you sit with us and join us?" And I said, "Well, I don't think they have food left, like we just asked." And they insisted, so we sat down, and he motions for the waitress to come over, and the lady who literally a minute ago just told me no, brought over 2 bottles of wine and 2 new plates for me and my friend MP. So this is just pretty hilarious, and we enjoyed a delicious meal with 2 of the kindest strangers on Christmas night, and again, it was just amazing. It felt like everything was working out for us. So to me, that night encompassed the vibe of our entire trip. We were 2 friends traveling Europe with no real plan and having the best time and the most success. Now I have to thank my friend MP for embarking on that journey with me. It was her selflessness, her bravery, and her belief in me, and her attitude that brought the best out of me. I had my greatest athletic success with the aid of my best friend in the most unconventional way. But now that I think about it, it all makes sense now. She had been in my shoes before. Not many years earlier, she was racing at those same races, traveling through those same villages, and she understood the anxieties and fears that came with being an athlete. She created an environment for me that was understanding of my needs as a human first. She was empathetic when I was down. She was strong when I couldn't be, and overall just supportive. She understood the entire situation without me having to explain or justify myself, which felt like a first for me. It's crazy, but that was my first and last experience with a woman coach in the sport of ski racing. I'm forever grateful for this experience. It honestly has had the greatest impact on my perspective in sport, and it has made me the woman I am today. I hope to hear more stories like this one in female sports that exhibits camaraderie, friendship, and belief in each other. And this is like my favorite photo was from that trip. Thank you.
Now, I would suggest that we do the Q&A here.
Sure.
Okay, now let me. And we put the 4, 4. Okay, here, there's one. Okay, so do we have, while I try to deal with the test, someone who wants to start with questions? And I remind that the people that are following us from remote can also ask questions, and they can just need to write their questions in the Q&A, and I will read them out. So who wants to start? Too busy trying to do the spotlights. You are also allowed to ask questions to each other.
I think that's a great idea. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. You use the.
No, I think we need to.
No. Yeah. But also use yeah, and unmute yourself. I'm
Test 1, 2. I don't have it.
Well, if we all unmute ourselves, that'd probably be a lot.
I know. It's going to be. Can I shout my question?
Yeah.
I think so. All right. So Mikaela, you had a female coach and great experience.
You unmute yourself, right?
I unmuted myself. I am.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, I did. See,
Okay,
right there.
Oh.
I'm good. So you're saying you would not have had that experience with a male coach? What was it? Is it the characteristics You know, it's a personal experience, and I don't know. I was like, I'd love for my husband to coach me. That'd be so awesome.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like a best friend coaching you, and I got that. So, you know, was gender a factor, or was it more characteristics and personality?
Okay. Okay. Does this work?
Should. Okay. It's not working anymore. It's not working anymore.
Well, I'll answer it. The funny thing is that knows this, but
Yeah.
I do believe it was gender had a role in this process. Funny thing is this past season I went on did the same thing with my boyfriend and it didn't go as well. So,
Okay, I probably lied about my
He's
husband.
great and all, but like it really was like it's emotional. Or me, I'm sensitive, but sport is emotional. Like, and I think as many years as an athlete, when I had always male coaches, I respect a lot of them and a lot of them were great, but I also had a lot of them who just refused to try and be empathetic, I suppose. And that I think that was like the key thing is she understood full circle because she was an athlete as well. And literally was at the same race with me the first time I ever went there. So being a female, yes. Being an athlete prior, like double yes. And I just think that she just had an understanding which goes beyond like comfort of friendship or not. Like I would choose anyone who would do that, regardless if they were my friend or not, I guess, because she was very understanding.
It reminds me of Michelle Willis was associate athletic director at Ohio State, and they were hiring a new basketball coach for the women's basketball team. And the girls were saying, yeah, I want someone, I don't want anyone emotional. I don't want any of this emotional women baggage. I need someone to be direct. I need someone to be hard on me. I need someone that, you know, just is just disciplined and blah, blah, blah. And talking about all these masculine traits versus feminine traits. And so Michelle got the chalkboard out, or the whiteboard, maybe it's a chalkboard, it's been a while. And she started saying, tell me what you want. And she started writing down what everyone was saying. What do you want in a coach? And then she says, okay, if I can find you that at someone with all these characteristics, and it was a woman, would you guys mind? And that's where they started thinking, gosh, you know, there's more to it. There's these traits, but the end of the story is they went ahead and they hired a male anyway. So that kind of blows that one, or what they did with that. But you're absolutely right as far as, you know, what she brought to you was something that are more nurturing and traits that are so that a female has that I love my girlfriends and walking and talking and everything else and what they bring to the table that not many males bring. But in leadership roles, you know, we're seeing that the best leaders are the ones that pull from both the male and female traits. And that's what even elevates them even higher. Kind of like you have a golf bag and all your different clubs, and you're able to pull out the different clubs for the different situations that you're able to adapt your masculinity side, your femininity side, whatever's needed for the situation. So excellent.
Anyone from the public want to ask something? Yep. Yeah, this time you go. Or you can do like this. Yeah. Stay near here so people from home can hear you.
Yes.
No, it's okay. Should be.
You can talk.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. My question is, I'm trying to sort of articulate it because it's a bit complex. Both sport and religion are areas of sex segregation in a way. That you have an organization with sport, there is female sport, and there is male sport. In religion, you have, as you were saying, where you can have a woman leader but only within the female element. Now, how is it possible then to overcome this? Is it possible for women how can women get to the top of this organization, or like sort of general organization, when they are in a certain path? Because if you are a woman athlete, you compete only with women. If you are a woman, religious woman, let's say you are a nun, say you are in a convent, you deal only with women. So how is that possible? What do you think would be possible to do to overcome this?
You want to go?
If you want, you can.
No,
Okay,
give it
it's
to
for me first. Okay. Well, that's a very hard question, in fact. It's quite difficult, and you are perfectly right. I didn't see before this parallel between sport and religion, that, you know, you can be leader, but only within your own gender, not across gender. Or well, I think in case of religion, that comes with secularization first. So once the religion is not so much important in daily life, then that barrier imposed by religion, by religious institutions, disappeared. So I think that's one way to think of it. Obviously, in sports is different because you cannot compete directly with the men because of the physical characteristics. So I don't know, I'm not a specialist in sports, but I guess it's quite difficult to compete with men. In case of religion, I think you can compete with men if you are allowed to sit at the same table. But you need also a good settlement around you, a good context that will support you to compete with men, because otherwise you don't have the competencies and the capabilities that you need to. Yeah, that's a very good question. I don't know if I answered it. Yeah, thank you.
You have women breaking barriers in sports all the time, and that's giving role models, of course. We just, the Miami Marlins had the first female GM in the Major League Baseball, first woman general manager. I just saw in a news feed that Division I soccer program just hired the first female, had a female coach for the men's team, and you're seeing some of this. I think it's about 2% of men's teams are coached by female in collegiate athletics across the board. But one thing I didn't mention before is one of the tactics is called homologous reproduction. Sometimes that's considered, sometimes that holds back the women ascending to higher positions, and sometimes it increases, because what homologous reproduction is basically hiring someone in your likeness. So there's studies out there that said men are hiring more men. There's more males out there in hiring positions, they're hiring more men. However, as women are so slowly infiltrating these positions with decision-making and authority, and they are in the hiring positions, they are hiring, the statistics are that they are hiring more females. So this, and given, I go back to that, they have to be, and institutions are seeing this, leagues are seeing this. There are more training where they're preparing women for these leadership positions with fellowships and mentorships and, you know, year-long programs, intensive programs, where they're getting them prepared to go into these positions. That's what you have to do, because women can be leaders of men's sports. The executive director for National NBA Players Association is a female. I mean, they're out there, and it's happening in Europe. It's happening in America. It's happening all over the world. The pace is just very, very, very small. Or slow.
I would just say that in in what I know about sports. I know it's changing, the narrative's changing with examples like Allison Felix at the last Olympics, having had a child and then competing at the next Olympics at the highest level. It just was unprecedented, where usually women, when you step away from sport or retire from your career, you're just kind of done. You don't really get back into it or take the coaching role or take the athletic director role, because you need to start a family if that's what you want. And usually that involves you being at home or at least taking care of your kids in some fashion. And sport requires a lot of traveling. So from my perspective, and what I've heard older teammates say, is pretty much when you're done, like my older teammate was just saying to me, she was debating retiring because she's like, well, I have to start having kids soon. And I was like, that's just true. Like, I don't know, like it's hard to do both. And now that we have one example, maybe that'll change, but that is definitely a factor.